Welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here, where we are all allowed to be perfectly imperfect. I'm Aylin Webb. I'm a psychologist, CBT and EMDR therapist, anxiety mastery coach, author of 4 books, and podcaster as well. My guest in this episode is Miki Win. His father, Ba Van Win, was Chinook pilot at South Vietnamese Air Force, and his heroic ditch at sea rescue mission during the Fall of Saigon was made to a documentary in 2015 called Last Days in Vietnam, and it was nominated for an Oscar. I watched it and I definitely recommend it. It's an amazing story of the fall of Saigon and how life was those last few days of the Vietnam War. And the story of Miki, Ba Van, and their family is just one, but a very impressive and absolutely incredible. So today, Miki is really proud to launch his late father's memoir, The Last Flight Out, marking the 50th year remembrance of the dramatic escape of not only his family, but of course, thousands of other Vietnamese refugees. And this powerful collection of stories chronicles Ba Van Nguyen's bravery, sacrifice, and reflections on the Vietnam War, offering timeless lessons on leadership, courage, and the human spirit. And not to forget love. Our love and our commitment to our families can make us go above and beyond anything that we think humanly is possible. And as you listen to this story and how Ba Van Nguyen has actually managed to rescue his family and escaped certain death, for sure, you will, if you watch this on YouTube, you'll be able to see the pictures as well. I will also say that for those of you who are listening, you will not be able to see when we refer to the pictures. So please be aware of that. If you would like to see the slides and the pictures that Miki and I will be talking about, please do go on the link that's on episode description for YouTube and click on the YouTube episode so that you can also watch all the pictures and slides and videos that we might put in there. Okay, are you ready for an incredible story from the person who has been there many, many years ago? He was only 6.5 then, in 1975. Miki, hello and welcome to I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here. It's such an honor to have you here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and
It's
share my family story.
really wonderful. So thank you for coming in and joining in with us today. Let's tell our audience what to expect from this conversation today, just briefly.
Uh, Stories of heroism, suspense, drama, overcoming obstacles. Yeah, these are the themes that I've shared for a while now with my father and my family story.
Yes. And also, I think we will deepen it a little bit more and see how that boy who was 6.5, how all of that has affected his adulthood as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
Having that father who was a hero in Vietnam War, and and then after moving to the US and being saved by your dad, how all of that has affected the rest of your life.
Right.
Uh, that would be really nice to touch upon as well, that resilience building. So if we take you back to, just to give information, Miki is this amazing person whose dad was Chinook pilot in South Vietnamese army. And the 29th of April, 1975, you were six and a
Right.
half years old. Your dad, alongside with, I think, some other Chinook pilots, had to do what he could to save his family.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And let's just hear the story from you.
Again, thank you, Aylin, for allowing me to come here on your platform and to share this story. And so, for the audience, I'm bringing up the a few slides, and I think the slides will help accompany the storytelling. As we all know, a picture's worth a thousand words, and so, um, for myself and my family, the opportunity to share this story uh, occurred probably in 2009, 2010 timeframe, where uh, we know from history that the fall of Saigon, the fall of um, the South in Vietnam occurred April 29, April 30th, 1975. And this happened because of the North, the communists coming in and overtaking the whole South. And as I go into the story, we left Vietnam. We'll make it in 1975 and did not know the name of the ship nor the captain until many years later on in 2009, about 30, 35 years later on. And this was a story that we shared around dinner tables. It was a story that my dad shared with his buddies, when they'd come over Seattle here and other parts of the US. And so as a kid growing up, this was a story that not only that I experienced as a 6.5-year-old, uh, but years later on, hearing it from my dad retelling it. And so it was an honor to have uh, given an opportunity to share the story in Last Days in Vietnam, a documentary that was produced by Rory Kennedy uh, in 2014, and then eventually got nominated for an Oscar in 2015. And so today, I wanted to honor my dad, and the timing of it made sense in terms of the 50-year remembrance of the fall of Saigon uh, in 2025 here. And so, in the past few years, my dad, before he passed away in 2013, he enjoyed writing, and many of his stories that were written in Vietnamese were published in many of the Vietnamese newspapers all across the U.S. And so it was his desire, it was his wish to have, to put a book together, but he never got the chance to do that. And so, as we all know, when stories or editor things get published in newspapers, the newspaper gets thrown away or recycled a few days later. And so, uh, myself and my mom wanted to honor his wish years later on and to find his Word documents that he kept and to compile it all together in both versions, both Vietnamese and English. And so I'm just here to again honor my dad's goal of putting a book together and to uh, also time it in such a way that it brings in the 50-year remembrance of the fall of Saigon. And so that's the book that he wrote, Chinh Bay Sao Công, which is a Vietnamese version in the last flight out, written by him. So it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble here in the U.S. From that standpoint.
Yeah, amazing story as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing story. So reading that from your dad's writing is absolutely amazing. Um,
I'm glad you brought that up because when I shared about when I shared about the film, uh, and when I shared about the story in the documentary, there's two documentaries. The first one was produced by Jan Herman. I'll bring up that name. He was a U.S. historian from
hmm,
the in 2009 that actually discovered this story many years later on in 2009. And then him, he and the U.S. Navy put together a documentary called The Lucky Few. And so a couple years later, then Rory's film Last Days in Vietnam came out to add more color to the whole event of Vietnam.
Last
Um,
days, last days in Vietnam is
correct.
amazing. It's done so beautifully, and also people who have been involved are
Hmm.
telling the story as well, including the captain
Yeah.
uh, in USS Jacobs, I think.
You, USS Kirk
Sister.
and
Yes,
Captain Paul
yes,
Jacobs.
there. Yeah, and the chief engineer has been telling. I think Doyle has
Hugh
been also
Doyle, yes,
telling
Mr.
the
Hugh Doyle.
story, and you are telling the story in this documentary as
From
well.
a 6.5-year-old perspective. That's
Yes,
all.
yes,
That's it. And,
exactly.
and 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 the rest of the story, is my dad's. And so I'm honored to represent his story, right? From that standpoint.
Yeah, and it's great
Yeah.
to have you here to tell us
Yeah.
how this has been for you this day, how you experienced this day. So I can see on this slide.
Hmm.
Can you
Yeah, yeah. I'll frame it up. So before I wanted to at least the second slide here is who's the man? Who was Ba Vang Wing, my father? And just a little history up front. Again, it also I want to weave in the history of Vietnam as well. And again, occupied for many years, the French occupation up and Japan as well, China as well. So Vietnam has a history of just being well. It's a very a highly desired location, right next to the Pacific, a lot of resources, minerals, all of that. And so, uh, my dad, born in 1940, grew up. This was uh, uh, after World War II, the Korean War in the 50s as well. Uh, he got an opportunity to join the uh, the military after high school, college. Uh, Love of country, a patriot, and he didn't want to see the country being occupied by a one world, a one government, right? Communism. And so he got an opportunity to, after all the skill training and the mental, testing and everything else, got an opportunity to come to United States to train in '63 for to fly helicopters as well as in '69. So a couple of times here, and along with military training, helicopter flight training, you also learned English, and so this was the opportunity that he got in his early military days. Uh, and along with my dad as my hero, the other hero in this whole thing is my mom as well. In her just support of my dad and her sacrifice and everything else. We'll weave that story of my mom and the love that they had for each other and the cooperation that they had with each other to come, to the U.S. to restart all over again. You know, and there I am, their father and son, um, in that picture. So this is the man himself, very well disciplined, trained, love of country, and the U.S. in 1973 basically pulled out of this war, this conflict, and but there were still, the U.S. embassy, and as you saw in the film, a lot of military folks in Saigon, um, winding down the activity. But as the communists continued to encircle the city of Saigon, finally on April 29, 1975, and then the few days up, the next day after that, we see, pictures in many of the magazines, Time Life magazine and many other media, the tank rolling into the capital of Saigon. And at that point, as you saw in the film, just a chaos at this point. Um, Many of the folks, including my dad, or many of the folks that worked with the U.S. Government and U.S. military, knew that if they gotten caught, it would not have ended well for them in terms of president and everything else around that. And so, uh, these are some of the many iconic images that we see in newspapers as well as captured in the film. Now, at this point in time, on April 29th, my mom and our immediate family, myself back then, as she's 6.5, younger brother Mika 4, and then a baby sister Mina, age of 7 months, were at my we were at my grandma's house in the middle of Saigon. Previous to that, we lived on the military barracks, the military Air Force base, which was an hour away. Uh, but during this time frame, it got bombed, and obviously my dad didn't want the family in that on the barracks, so we moved the family into my grandma's house, his mom and dad. And at this, he was still um, with his other military uh, uh, pilots, continuing to um, keep an ear on the radio just for the next order what to do. But at this time frame here, uh, basically his commanding officer and all of the superiors had basically uh, fled. Right? They knew the writing on the wall. They knew that there was no way to stop this insurgent
Yeah, I
activity
get that.
coming in.
There was no one left to give any orders. They had just saved themselves, and everyone had to take that responsibility of saving themselves and their parents in their own hand, their families
Yeah,
in their own hands, and also no evacuation plans, nothing.
exactly.
That's why chaos. Yes, complete chaos.
Yeah. Um, and so in the film, it was a more of a wider look in terms of how the embassy and how all of that was played out. But in as a 6.5-year old and in my family story, this is how it was played out among one family out of many others that were trying to leave. Uh, so at this point, after waiting for orders, but nothing at this, he said, "Well, guys, I think we're on our own here, right? We're left with our," and he used the analogy of his helicopter, his Chinook, is his horse. And at this point, this was a Wild West. There was really no order anymore, and everyone, had to figure things out for themselves. And so he told his other pilots, "Hey, go and get your family, and we'll circle back further south to get out of the hot zone, and then figure things out from there." And so that's what he did. He got one of the Chinooks and flew into uh, downtown Saigon, landed the helicopter in front of a playfield. And mind you, the city, as it is today, densely populated, a lot of people, and just uh, when he you know landed the helic and this Chinook, I don't know if I mean the audience, the Chinook CH-47 is a very loud, a huge helicopter. You can hear it flying from a mile away. And so as he yeah, as he landed the Chinook in front of there was a playfield at my grandma's house back then, and told the co-pilot to go drop the back door, and my mom holding baby sister and myself and just our immediate family ran to the back, into the helicopter. And my grandma and grandparents and aunts and uncles, they decided not to go into the helicopter. And my mom said, "Come on with us," but they basically said, "No, go with your husband." because at this point nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, the outcome of it. Um, so we got into the helicopter and flew further south, and the thinking was to rendezvous with a few of the other pilots that have gotten their family as well, and load up on food, load up on ration gas, and to find a remote island, perhaps, to buy time and figure out things from there. Uh, that was the idea. That was the thinking. But he also heard on the radio that, and he knew there were U.S. Navy ships further out in the Pacific, and that option, uh, let's give that option a chance. Maybe a carrier or a ship big enough for him to land. So that's what he did. He took a chance and knew enough um, to load up everyone. And in the helicopter that you see, that's him right there in the helicopter flying um, about 14, 15 individuals, family members, other, he had a co-pilot, mechanic, gunner, um, his his crew on there with their girlfriends, and obviously my mom and the three family here, three of us, uh, headed out to the Pacific. And the first he flew out there not knowing exactly if he was going to find anything big enough for this helicopter to land. But he sees a ship in the distance and approaches it uh, in such a way that it didn't pose any sort of aggressiveness or any, because the folks on the ship there, uh, they didn't know if he was a communist or someone coming to do harm, right? And so he approached it and encircled it several times. Uh, but there was no obvious way of landing. As you can see, this is actual picture of the USS Kirk itself. Years later, found out that it was a frigate, a submarine destroyer, and it had a lot of radar, sonar equipment. And so, if he tried to get too close to it and it didn't work out, um, the blades, the rotors on the helicopter could hit something expensive and knock it out of commission. Uh, we also see many of uh, the magazines, images here and there. Other pilots thinking the same idea as going out to sea and seeing if there's something that they can land on it. And these are some of the images that smaller Hueys helicopters coming in and landing on the deck, and family members and the pilot would jump out and to make room for the next one to come. The crew had to push these expensive helicopters over the side to make room for the next one to come.
Yes, I saw that in the documentary because there's no one to fly them away anymore because everyone
Ex
gets off. So
yeah,
everyone have been just pushing all these huge Chinooks and helicopters just off to the sea, which was absolutely amazing.
yeah,
Desperate times, desperate measures.
yeah, exactly. Desperate times calls for creative thinking and cleverness and uh, the again the Captain Paul Jacobs, an incredible human being, very compassionate. Uh, he knew that there's families and folks seeking help and breaking protocol and just doing the right, you know, helping, right? Doing the right thing and trying to help despite n not having the equipment, not despite his ship being small. They had to think creatively. So
And I heard that your dad was also worried about having enough fuel.
yes, I'm
That
I'm
might have
sure I'm sure that was for sure on his mind, given that again taking the risk to go out there and not, as you can see in the picture here and in the film, many of the crewmen say, "Hey, you're too big, go away," and my mom remembers seeing the folks below with big guns pointing up at my dad, saying, "Hey, you know can't be here. You're just too big. But my dad kept persisting, and eventually that English that he learned many years ago came back handy because he was able to communicate with the captain of the ship and the crew. And they finally, after what seemed like a long eternity, just circling around the ship, eventually was able to communicate with the captain, and both of them were able to figure out, what to do next. And so we see in this blown up image here the middle the my little baby sister there, like my mom holding her up, saying, "Hey, there's kids on board here. We're looking for help." We also see in the film the folks that were dumping gallons of the white. Uh, that was actually water, you know. But in the event that if my dad ran out of gas or didn't get a chance to do what he did, which was to, offload everybody on the ship, and the ship, told him to go away, that he no gas or ran out of gas in the ocean. And so when you see that in the film, it was to dump all the water out so that they can use that as a flotation buoy, to stay afloat. Because this was not meant to go out into the ocean. It didn't have any life preservers or anything. And so that was part of that film where you see his crewmen dumping water out in the white canister to use as something to as a buoy in case of running out of gas and getting in the water. So this iconic image here, this picture here is again Captain Paul Jacobs, uh, and again incredible human being. He lead through example, right? Lead through getting. He didn't lead through sitting in a leather chair and telling people and telling his crewmen what to do. He was there. He was there helping with all the guys, um, and working, pushing things over and directing.
Incredible.
Um, so and again, the image that you see there on the far left, the deck was just simply too narrow, just way too narrow to land anything that huge. And so we don't have an image of or a video of the actual jump, but a painting by Adam Colts who painted this picture and presented it to our family in 2010 as a uh, just during the USS reunion.
I
We'll
think
talk about that later on. But you can see in the picture there jumping out.
and just just to let our audience know, those who are listening and not seeing this, I think that you would have seen Chinooks in many films where the military are flying. It's the big one with two propellers.
Props, yes. Rotors.
That makes it quite different and special compared to other helicopters, and has, as you said, Miki, it's got a really deep boom 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 sound,
Yes.
which you which you loved the other day when I said I find it quite soothing. I think it's
Yeah.
a really nice sound.
And
And
I appreciate that you mentioned that your son-in-law.
my son-in-law is, yes, in the army,
Yes.
and he's a Chinook pilot, just like your
Outstanding.
dad. Yes.
Outstanding.
So I'm used to listening to they live on the base, so I am used to listening.
Yeah. So for Eileen's audience out there who may know a lot about her and her practice, now you know a little bit about her. One of her family members also flew the Chinook here.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
that's cool.
yes.
Um, and
Really.
then the far picture on the right there is an illustration cartoon from that the New York Times did. It's still on the New York Times website, but you can see I clipped the picture of my mom throwing the baby sister out, and another individual that we met at the reunion in 2010. His name was Mr. Kent Chipman, and he when we met him many years later again, he said I was one of I was the guy down there that caught the baby when we met him, and so he said it was like catching a basketball coming coming out of the Chinook there. So
So your dad kind of hovered above the ship, and your mom was holding your sister,
yeah,
baby sister, and they dropped her for someone to catch her on the
y yes,
credit.
yes, yeah. Because at this time, the captain had to keep the ship moving straight, and the only way to keep it straight because of the swell and the current and the wind could push the ship in a random motion, and so you have to keep the ship moving steady. And at the same time, my dad was hovering the Chinook uh, towards the stern of the ship, and keep it steady enough so that we can jump. And mind you, with this, the waves, the current, the wind, anything could have happened. And so I just appreciative and grateful that the crewmen below, folks like Mr. Kent Shipman, um, took the risk to stand underneath this huge behemoth um, helicopter and catch folks jumping out. So uh, yeah, yeah, it was um, so everybody jumped out, and he, he told his co-pilot to make sure that everybody the back was clear, everyone got out, and then finally told the co-pilot to also jump onto the deck of the ship. And the last thing that that I remember was the crewman and the captain, told everybody to go inside because they didn't want kids and folks running out on the deck. It was just so that's the last thing we see, and we turn around is my dad, hovering away from the from the ship. Um,
Do
and it
you
wasn't.
do
Go
you
ahead.
remember what your thoughts were in that last moment as you were going in and you saw your dad hovering away? What was there anything? Do you remember any thoughts, any feelings?
Yeah, we were wondering like, where's dad going? What's he gonna do? Because did what's he gonna do? He's still in there, and my mom at this time was just in massive anxiety, fear, just the unknown. Uh, when you when you talk about anxiety, and I know that's the thing that um, at this moment in time, it was a life and death situation.
Don't know if
Uh,
he's going to actually make it or what he's going to do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I and last week when you and I had that intro call, um, fear and anxiety really, if you're getting chased by a tiger, or in one of your podcasts, you talked about a squirrel, right? Startling you. I enjoyed that part. Um, but in this case, anxiety and fear was absolutely, it's a life and death situation, and so but at this time she had to keep her calm and her composure with a baby on it. And uh, my baby, my brother, younger brother four, he when he jumped down, he had uh, some complication that my mom had to tend to, and so her mind was just on so many things racing, like where's my husband, what's he gonna do, and while at the same time baby in hand. And her Micah, my younger brother, had some complications, and so it was just stress.
Lots of adrenaline.
Yeah, a lot of that going on. So my dad had to figure out exactly, what he had to do next once everybody was cleared. He knew his family was safe now, you know, on the ship, but it was just him now, and he had to figure things out. And the next slide here I'm going to show here is what would happen if or what would happen if we didn't get the chance to leave the country. What would happen is because what would happen would be that they would have, the communists would have captured him and sent him to what re-education camp, right? Uh, Jail, and with his rank, towards the end, he earned the rank of lieutenant colonel, and so it would have been at least 13, 15 years in this sort of hellhole. So there's no and that, and number two, um, since his family was on that ship, there was no way in hell that he was going to go back to land, go back to, it was going to be, I got to be there with, with the family. So what he did was he hovered about 100 yards away or so, in this picture here, and the picture of him here, he had to take off all of his gear, his gun, and you know, his his jacket, his flak jacket, all of that. Uh, Untie his boots while at the same time hovering the Chinook, and it seemed like forever. Uh, so and he got down to his undergarment, and it was just him at this point, and he gave a thumbs up to the captain, saying, I'm ready. I'm ready to get out of this thing." And the captain, the crew there got ready. They launched the little skiff there to hopefully, you know, pick him up and uh, either dead or alive. All right. So that's what he did. He got down to his undergarment and kicked the door, removed the door to his port side, his left side, and with his right leg, he kicked the control, the rudder control, and flipped try to flip the Chinook to the right while he jumped to the left, and that's the picture that we see.
That is the moment, isn't it,
Yeah,
where is crashing into the sea and your dad is on the other side. Incredible that he survived that.
unbelievable, unbelievable. And and again, he shared uh, around the dinner table years, once everything met his buddies again in Seattle here where we live. Uh, he shared that every time that he tried to dive into the water, salt water is really buoyant, kept pushing him back up. And so after the third or fourth try, he was able to get underneath the water. While this thing is just, breaking apart, just thrashing apart behind him. And who's to, he could have flipped back, the helicopter could have flipped back on him, or a shrapnel could have fallen down, or just, again, luck, uh, some skill,
Amazing skill.
God, all of that, just everything, the timing, everything had to just, the alignment of the stars and everything had to, uh, come into play. And you can see him in that picture there, the kicking hard, trying to get out of uh, that explosion. But fortunately, everything settled down, and there he is. He's just bobbing right there, and they came out and picked him up. And so, yeah, we see him in the picture. My mom saved that shirt, and sort of 19 early 70s paisley kind of shirt and shorts. She kept that through the years, and eventually, settled in the U.S. And after he got into, he studied electronics and got into Boeing, retired from Boeing in 1999. And I took um, give him uh, a retirement gift. I put a little keepsake box together. Found him on where did you keep, all of that. And this was again 10 years before finding out about the USS Kurt. We put it all, I gave it to him in his um, retirement party. And so that pair of shirts and shorts is basically how we how we started here in this
Yeah,
country.
that
And we see him talking to the captain there as well.
yeah, pair of shorts and a shirt and nothing else. but more importantly, his family. He kept his family safe, and you had many years as well with your dad in safety.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering how that has been for you as well. You know, how your dad managed to come to a new country, start a new life, re-educate himself, make a new life for himself and for his family. And did he did he ever show any signs of PTSD? Because this is just incredible. And how was there any changes in your family life, or how did you thrive? How was life in the new country? How was your new life? I'm aware I asked so many questions now.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where to start. And they're all great questions. Uh, it
There more?
the,
Was
the
there
only
things that you wanted to? Was there more slides?
let's see.
Did I
No, that was yeah, that was really it. That was really it.
because I want to make sure I don't move too fast uh, as well before you finish that
Yeah,
part.
so that yeah, this is where again I was just uh again an honor and a privilege to share this family story in the film. And I want to just, this is our family story. There were thousands and thousands of other Vietnamese refugees, boat people's stories that difficult to hear and horrific and their own, their own challenge in their own ways. But this was my dad and our family story. So just humble to have this opportunity and to be here in America where, to answer your question, uh, I don't I don't think that my mom and dad had enough time to worry about. It was just once we got on the ship, and again, we were on the ship for only about 24 hours before. Well, let me put it this. Let me kind of close up on the story. He got on the ship, and it just happy. We saw the last picture, him kind of talking with the captain, doing a little, debrief, and uh, just relieved that for years, if not, well, many days of anxiety, not knowing what's going to go on, not knowing if I can get myself out, my family out of this country, because if I don't, I'm going to be, either killed or be sent. So a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and at that moment of just ditching it, the last thing that he had to do was get off his horse, basically, right? It was the Wild West. It was his horse, and he got out of that horse and landed on the ship. It's like, the first thing he asked for back then was, I need a cigarette. The adrenaline was high, right? He needed to just like calm down. I mean, before even asking, where's my wife and kids, he's just like, give me a cigarette before I see them.
The man just came back from almost certain death. So, so excused for asking for a cigarette.
I I put myself in his shoes. It's like I don't know how he did it. The amount of pressure, the amount of stress, the amount of anxiety for many years as a pilot, and hearing from that every day. It's like this impending, tiger coming at you, coming at you, coming at you every day. And so the months leading up to that day, all of that, I can't, I yeah,
You mentioned that at that time it was just normal. It was just what it was. You never questioned it. When they said jump, you're like, okay. Do you, you know,
sure,
that you never questioned it, which
because it was.
trauma, because it's like, yeah, that mom and dad are asking me to jump, so it must be okay. And
Well, as I shared with you last week, at 6.5-year-old boy living on the military barrack and base, it was my life. It's all I knew. Um, I love climbing trees. I'm curious. I love, all sorts of, I just, everyday life. And so, um, follow along with everybody, jump along with everybody. No big deal. But it wasn't until like as an adult and processing all this, it's like, holy criminy. And I put myself in my mom and dad's shoes is where I'm coming from as an adult and the amount of sacrifice and all of those things that like how in the heck did he do that? And the sacrifice that my parents took and all of that over, having to speak a new language in a new country as an adult, it's like, oh my God, that is a lot of work. And so I'm just like, I am not worthy.
Where did that
Mm.
where,
There's a lot of mental things going on in my head as an adult.
where did that come from? So was there something about comparing yourself with
Hmm.
the heroism of your dad and then
Absolutely.
fill in the huge shoes?
Huge shoes.
Yeah.
Incredibly huge.
Yeah, and it is just not, you won't ever have a chance to be a Chinook pilot. And so if that is your standard
Oh,
to feel worthy, was that
yeah.
also, what was your dad's standard like as you were growing up? How much?
Oh, super high military discipline. Um, old school dad. Back then, whippings and canes. Oh, I grew up, yeah, uh, oh, the worry of, coming to this country and surviving and finding a job, finding employment, speaking the language, being discriminated at work as a kid growing up, going first grade and myself, being called all sorts of derogatory things, going through those things, my mom and dad got it worse than me as a kid, coming into this country, looking different than your peers, right? So a lot of those things, just and again, for my dad, again, knew, you know, decent English, enough to fly a plane, enough to understand the instructions, the technical aspects of flying a helicopter. But my mom, zero English. And so imagine if something happened to, you know, and you had to flee to another country and start all over again, trying to figure out, learn a new language to assimilate or to survive. And we see that right now, across the world.
Culture shock?
Yes. It's one thing to take a 1 week or a 2 week vacation to a different country uh, and to vacation with money or to on all of that and to, speak. Oh, but it's another thing to just start all over again with nothing and to try to figure all of that out. Oh my God, it's just one of those things like, um, I, again, I'm just grateful for my mom and dad to have. Mm,
And you're on,
okay.
and you're amazing.
Yeah.
And you're honoring that story with putting together this book of your dad's writings.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because in the,
And your family story, and
well,
you are letting everyone know, as many people as possible, to hear about the story, because this is a story worth hearing. It's incredible, and it's empowering, and it shows what us as humans can do, what resilience we can have when we really, really have to to protect ourselves, to protect our family, do everything for them, what really matters to us. Then we become, as you say, lions, right?
yeah, well put, Eileen. When it comes to movies or films or TV shows, it's films like that or TVs like that and uh, anything suspenseful, dramatic, it makes for an interesting story, right? Marketable film, all of that. Uh, in, in and the chance to share that suspense and that drama and the story in the film, all of that, fantastic. But there's other aspects to that man, my dad, the family, things that led up to that and things after that. And so uh, uh, I use this dramatic story in a sense to number one, again, uh, uh, the story of one man, mom and dad, and how they got here, and all of those themes of overcoming, resilience, leadership, teamwork, but also the stories within the book that he wrote himself, uh, and allow him to share his own story. Yeah, little, here, um, history. It's his story. And so as a 6.5 boy, I was honored to at least represent it for, a while. But this, at the end of the day, this is the book that my kids will pick up and their grandkids, to understand the roots of how they came here to the U.S. But in the story, the book itself, there's stories of betrayal. There's stories of his buddies, turning their back. Many of those human types of stories, stories of like resettlement, not only from his perspectives, but his other buddies' perspective, stories of him coming back to Vietnam many years later on and interviewing and talking with others that were not lucky enough, fortunate enough, like him and his family to have left, and stories around like how people had to deal with the communists and how they were treated back then, family members and other friends, stories of love, lost love, right? Many of those things that are captured in his writing. So yeah, that's the whole premise of this book is just one man's perspective on how he saw things, uh, things that yeah, PTSD types of things, emotional types of things, uplifting types of things, example setting types of things, political types of things that work, that don't work, all of that.
Yeah, incredible. And just going back to you, growing up with your dad, having this incredible man as your father, and you are at a place, you have this amazing family, you have been saved, and came to a different country. And as you were mentioning, you feel different in this country. They look different, they speak different language because you're 6.5. A lot,
Hmm.
a lot of your beliefs are formed, and how you look at the world, as you say, mainly formed by then as well. So coming somewhere where everyone is different, they look different, they talk different, they do things differently. And then, of course, your dad is hard as it has been for him. He also has this pressure to make sure that you can make it, that his children can make it worthy of all that has happened and that they came to this country and had another chance. Was there, how did you feel that? Because there's that pressure of we have to make it here.
Oh, um, two things. He set a very high bar, obviously. He set a very, very high bar. And about 2 minutes ago, one of the things that popped up in my head that ties into all of this is people pleasing. I had to quickly please people around me to survive and to not be kicked out of the club or kicked out of the game or kicked out of this and that. So there's a lot of like my own identity and my own things that just so that I can please my friends around me. I started in the US, first grade, right? 7-year-old first grade. And so looking different and all of that. As any young kid, you always want to be, hey, come on and join our soccer game or come on and join the playfield. So you had to like learn quick to figure out some way to please others or at least be friendly enough or say the right things or to get invited to be included. Right. So uh, pleasing my mom and dad, pleasing my mom and dad was one of those things that to this day, as a 56-year-old, still trying to live up to that. And it's one of those gaps that, ooh, at times it's challenging, difficult, frustrating. So I'm still learning to figure out a balance between pleasing others and figuring out what makes sense for me and my own identity. So it's a day-to-day practice, as you and I were laughing, joking about a week ago. We were talking.
You have learned, in order to keep yourself safe and feel belonging, to keep others happy. Yeah, if I'm pleasing them, if I say yes, even though it's not okay for me, if I'm nice to them and I just do whatever you know, it requires for me to belong in that group, I'll do it because that will keep me safe. Because it's unsafe
Survival.
to be outside, right? Outside group. That's what you have learned by the sounds of
Right.
it. And I guess, sometimes it becomes seated in our subconscious, and our subconscious kind of decides our behavior. And
Mm.
even though we learn this in our childhood, it just unquestioned moves into our adulthood. And whenever we are in our adulthood doing that people pleasing
Yeah.
behavior, even though we are aware that that's not what we want to do, but we go above and beyond our, our abilities, and it causes frustration, sometimes burnout, just because we want to keep the other people happy.
Mm.
Um, that 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 never gets questioned.
Hmm.
Uh, but we are not doing it in the present time. We are actually doing it to the past. We
Mm.
are people pleasing still in our past, not
Yeah.
in the present time, or we are reacting to the past, not to the present time. And so I guess this is where we, as coaches and therapists, come into the picture, start questioning that subconscious belief that is driving the behavior, how detrimental it is for how we live our lives, or how we
Mm.
are living our lives as well. And I guess that's a good question sometimes to ask. Okay, I am given this day as a gift. How do I want to live it?
Right.
What do I owe myself or my future self when I'm in my deathbed, and all my desires and all my want to do's, they stand around, all the things, all my passions, they are standing around my bedside. Will they say, well, you have never made us reality? You have never give us a chance? Or am I doing everything that I want to do in this life? I
Mm.
guess that's kind of how we can, realize whether people pleasing, yes, but am I also doing what I owe myself to
Right.
a fulfilling life, right?
Right. Right. I uh I I want to I love how you put that because and I want to pull back the question that you asked me 10 minutes ago, like did my dad, how did he handle PTSD and all of that? Um and how do we handle it? He Number one, as we got on the ship, transitioned, went to America, one after the next, after the next, after worry and worry. It's like, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to feed my family? So there was really little time. I don't want to say no time, but little time to really think about and ponder, many of those um, moments, of fear and anxiety and the guilt, the shame, and all of those things that I'm sure my dad had to have dealt with. Uh, in So the answer what I want to say here is that there was very little time that he and my mom had to process many of that because it was just one moment after the next. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make a living? And so, but I think that as time went on, years later, he was able to at least when he met up with his other military folks that can understand and where he was coming from, his other buddies, and they were sharing stories. It was I think I know that it was a way for him to just like, okay, talk about it, let it out, talk about it with somebody that went through the same, you know, drama and suspense and uh, agony and fear, all of those things. And so I think I hope that I am trying to say that um, it took time for him to at least talk about it, let it out, um, and to find um, uh, others that have went through the same situation that he did. So I think that's how he handled it. I think that's how he handled it. Again, my dad was a very stoic man. He was of a generation where kids, as American expression, kids should be seen and not heard. He was of that mindset, that old school mindset, that military discipline mindset. Uh, for me, I understand that, uh, and for me and my own kids, it's a different. I'm more open to expressing my emotions and my feelings, be more communicative to my kids because I learned, from my dad. Again, I call him my hero, all of that. I salute him, I honor him, but at the same time, there were things that, as a parent, he, you know, mm, you know,
I can,
um, yeah,
I think I mentioned
I'll
to
just
you,
leave it at that.
I can, I can recognize that because as you might remember, my dad was a chief engineer. He was in the Navy, and
Yeah,
he was not a man of emotions
mm,
either. You didn't. It was, I guess, also it's that generation emotion
yeah,
equals weakness. But I think our generation then we are a lot more open.
yeah,
Emotions are normal. It's okay. And especially if they match the situation, if you lost somebody, uh, it's okay to feel sad, for example. Uh, that's just the way we deal. If you feel you are unfairly treated, it's okay to feel angry. It's not about feeling angry is bad, it's about what you do with it that matters.
right, right,
Being angry is just one of our basic emotions, and how
right,
to deal with um, being unfairly treated. So,
right,
so emotions are normal as long as they match the situation. So
right,
that's why we were talking about sometimes we can get anxiety by just worrying about things that may or may not happen in the future,
right,
but they don't match the situation because in our mind we are actually in another dimension of something that hasn't happened yet, but
right.
we feel anxious right here, right now, because of what we are thinking. I think we are the only species that is capable of that. And
That's
it's
right.
for us.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. It's just been so amazing um, talking with you. So incredibly fascinating to listen to the story of your family and you, really, and your story as well.
I I I share this with the thought also that I know that in today's current climate, right? Political, economic, social, all of those things today, that there are other immigrants and refugees and others that have left their birth country for a better life. Legal or not, that's another conversation, but they had to take their own risk to leave. We know that in America today, early 2025 here. Uh, and so the story that I'm talking with you here, I'm hoping that it would be relatable to many of the audience members out there that, either, if not themselves or their parents, that are currently going through a transition of some sort, right, into a new country, survival, figuring out how to make a living, family, all of that. Um, in that the story here, uh, the conversation between me and you can at least, like, if there's one or two people out there listening to this, it's like, okay, you know, we're not alone.
Yeah.
Mickey's story was 50 years ago, and he's dealing with his own emotional stories today, in terms of my own mindset in how to deal with life ups and downs, um, and all of that. So that's the other uh,
Yeah, there
thing
are
that I'd like
so
to get across. It's just the others out there going through their own stories today.
absolutely. I think there's so many of us who have moved countries, whether alone or with their families. Me being one of them as well. I came to England 25 years ago again to build a better life for myself and for my child as well. And it's kind of starting all over again.
Mm.
I also did that years before in Denmark when I moved from Istanbul to
Mm.
Copenhagen. So I am so familiar with
Mm.
being different because I had dark eyes, dark skin, dark hair in a country where everyone was pale and had all sorts of colors of eyes, green and blue and all shades of blue and all shades of gray and blonde and so on. I definitely was different, and there were a few of other different looking people as well. But I think that resilience here is such a key, isn't it? Resilience to make it,
Yeah.
you know. But it does make a dent, and then you just repair it and you move on. It makes a dent, you repair it, you move on, right?
Yeah.
And you did too. You are incredibly resilient, and and the conversation is just wonderful. This chat with you, and you have built your life, your family, and you're absolutely wonderful to meet and talk with. So thank you so much. It's been just such an honor to meet you and listen to the story of you and your dad and your family. And I'm sure everyone listening is absolutely fascinated. So what we will do is we will put all the links in the description, episode description, so everyone can go and click the link if they want to buy the book of your dad and The Last Flight Out.
Mm.
And they can watch I think the last
Documentary.
Vietnam documentary, which was Oscar nominated. And I will also put your website so they can contact you if they want to, I
Sure.
guess.
Sure,
and,
sure.
and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Aylin, again for the opportunity to be here to share my dad and my father's story, my family's story. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us in I'm a Perfectionist, Get Me Out of Here podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave stars and a review. Help me spread the word by sharing this with your friends and family. My practical manual, Transformation Through the Power of Quotes, will help you or someone you know get through tough times and feel happier. It is now available on Amazon paperback and Kindle. You can also check out our website, mindandmood.co.uk. Thank you again, and remember, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. Bye for now.